Good morning. Welcome to the Kitsap Unitarian Universalist Fellowship and our online service. I invite you to follow along in the order of service. We will put the link in the chat. Whoever you are and wherever you have come from, for this hour, we here are one gathered congregation and all are welcome. My name is Melinda Hughes. I'm excited to be this morning's lay leader. I first started attending KUUF about 20 years ago. After being away for a few years, I ran into a friend from the fellowship who told me about the upcoming fellowship's birthday party. I attended and reconnected with many wonderful people. I had missed this community. Since the birthday party, I've reactivated my membership, participated in Sunday services, regularly attend coffee hour, and enjoy planning and delivering treats to members of my neighborhood group. I'm glad to be here with you this morning. Our worship leader this morning is our very own and much beloved Reverend Jessica Starr Rockers. I'd like to welcome any visitors. Please take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat box. We welcome more interaction with all during our after-service Zoom coffee hour. The link for coffee hour will go into the chat next. You will need to use the password coffee with a capital C to be admitted to the coffee hour. A live link will also be placed in the chat at the end of the service. Weekly announcements are available on our webpage, www.kuuf.org, and in our weekly email newsletter, The Candle. We would like to start today by acknowledging that for those of us living in Kitsap Peninsula, the land here is the Aboriginal territory of the Suquamish, the Sklallam, and the Skokomish people. They have lived in harmony with the lands and waterways along the Washington Central Salish Sea for thousands of years. These tribes still live here and protect the land and waters of their ancestors for future generations, as promised by the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855. Now, please enjoy our call to worship, Find the Stillness, hymn number 352 in the Singing the Living tradition, also known as our Gray Hymnal, performed by Brian Kenny and Mike Menifee.
Find a stillness, hold a stillness, let the stillness carry me. Find the silence, hold the silence, let the silence carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony. Seek the essence, hold the essence, let the essence carry me. Let me flower, help me flower, watch me flower, carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony.
Now, please join me in lighting our chalice. If you have your own chalice or candle at home, please light it as we say these words, which are in our order of service. There is a Time to Let Go by Reverend Gretchen Haley. There is a time to let go of the resistance, the steadfast march to complete the to-do list, for parents and activists, and for all who love this life, these people, these mountains, the sky. There is a time to rest and to trust the world will go on, filled with partners at the ready, all of us splitting shifts on this project of building and healing, tending and turning. Breath and being require their own practice, their own attention, and the heart needs time for becoming stronger after the shattering, the opening wider, the learning to love more and again. Come into this place, study stillness and joy. Know your belovedness like a memory calling out from the center of your being, connecting every little piece of everything to everyone and all of us. Feel here gratitude rising and praise for this chance to begin again this day with hope. Come, let us worship together.
And now it is time for something special. We are going to light our Advent candles. For many years, one of our traditions at Kitsap UU Fellowship was the lighting of Christmas candles on the Christmas tree with real candles on a real tree. This was done by longtime matriarch and now beloved ancestor Elizabeth Bondy. I have heard stories of this precious tradition and seen photos of the children lighting the candles as the adults leaned in with bated breath, ready to jump in if anything went amiss. Thankfully, it never did. And recently, I found this little tree that reminded me of Advent and this tradition and Elizabeth Bondy. And so I thought this year we would honor the season by lighting this little tree. Technically, in the Christian tradition, the first Sunday of Advent was last Sunday, but for our UU Advent this year, we are starting today. And we will light the fourth candle as the Christmas Eve candle. So let's begin. We are entering a time of year where the earth grows colder, the animals begin to hibernate, and the days become continually shorter. This morning marks for us the beginning of the season of Advent. Advent is in Christianity the beginning of the church year, recognizing the transforming power of God in the world and looking forward toward the birth of Jesus and the celebration of spiritual light. And Christians are not alone in celebrating light at this time of year. Hanukkah, solstice, and Kwanzaa all involve candles, fire, and lights. Each week until Christmas, we will light a new candle on our Advent tree, along with each of the preceding candles. And the flame of each candle represents a different aspect of our spiritual life. The first candle represents hope. The second represents peace. The third represents joy. And then the last candle will be our Christmas Eve candle, and that will represent love. So this morning, we light the first candle. As a symbol of hope and expectation. May we dare to open the shadowy places in our lives and hearts to the healing light of community. With the creative power of hope, we express our longing for peace and prepare our hearts to be transformed. And now for our opening hymn, a favorite of Elizabeth Bondy, sung by Elena Hemingway, O Tannenbaum.
Nicht nur zur Sommerzeit, nein auch im Winter, wenn es schneit. O Tannenbaum, wie treu sind deine Blätter. O Christmas tree, how lovely are your branches. Oh, Christmas tree, how lovely are your branches. Your boughs are green in summer's clime, and through the snow of winter time. Oh,
Please join me in the spoken affirmation. The words are on your screen. We gather as a caring community, seeking life's deeper meanings. We value diversity and affirm the worth of all living things. We strive to speak truth and love, to act for justice, to grow in spirit, and to care for the earth. We celebrate with open hearts and minds the creative power that sustains and transforms us. Planned Parenthood, our charitable giving recipient for the month of December, will now be acknowledged in this short video by a familiar face, beloved KUUF member, Gail Davis.
My name is Gail Davis, and I'm a member of the Kitsap Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Today I'm speaking about Planned Parenthood as a recipient of our charitable giving. My grandmother, Marie McCall, had 12 children. She was very clear about her feelings toward motherhood. Pragmatically, she accepted what she could not change. She had no source of birth control. Grandma always said she would not take $1 million for one of her children. However, she followed that up with, and I would not give a plugged nickel for another one. Grandma lived in another time when some farmers had large families to help with the many chores required to run an orchard, lay in crops, and finally milk 80 dairy cows. They didn't have money, but they always had food. But that's not the case for people all around the world. We have a pretty clear idea of how long our small planet could sustain human population if all families had 12 children. And the basics, such as food and water, would be the first to go. Aside from the finite availability of fresh water, there are constraints on the amount of food that the earth can produce. By 2025, the world population will be over 8 billion people. Around 2040, it could hit 9 billion, and by 2100, it could reach a massive 11 billion people. And we are already overusing our resources at 160%. But Planned Parenthood provides so much more than access to birth control and family planning. Early this year, I was diagnosed with cancer. My oncologist told me that proportionally, Black women took longer to seek medical attention and receive diagnosis and medical intervention. My stage 1 diagnosis was often a stage 4 for them. Why? Because they lacked medical insurance to keep them from going to a doctor. Planned Parenthood services include abortion, birth control, cancer screening, emergency contraception, health and wellness, pregnancy, education on sex and relationships, sexually transmitted infections, and sexual orientation and gender. Planned Parenthood is America's most trusted provider of reproductive health care. Skilled healthcare professionals are dedicated to offering all people high-quality, affordable medical care. 1 in 5 American women has chosen Planned Parenthood for health care at least once in her life. These healthcare centers provide a wide range of safe, reliable health care, and the majority is preventative care, which helps prevent unintended pregnancies through contraception, screen for cervical and other cancers, and reduce the spread of sexually transmitted infections through testing and treatment. Caring physicians, nurse practitioners, and other staff take time to talk with clients, encouraging them to ask questions in an environment that millions of women have grown to trust. Recently, the Fifth Court of Appeals ruled that Texas and Louisiana can cut off Medicaid to Planned Parenthood clinics. That restricts women's ability to seek a legal abortion along with those seeking cancer screenings, birth control, and other non-abortion related health services, even in states where Planned Parenthood clinics do not offer abortions. 6 newly appointed conservative judges now sit on that court. The trend is real and impactful. I believe that we at KUUF can make a difference in our area, in our state, and our country by supporting Planned Parenthood and helping all women to live informed and healthier lives.
Now is the time for our morning offering. If you would like to donate electronically, please click on the PayPal Me link in the chat. You may then email admin@kuuf.org to let us know if your donation is for the KUUF General Fund, the Minister's Discretionary Fund to help members in need, or our monthly charitable giving recipient, Planned Parenthood. You may also send a check to the address on the screen. Please write in the memo line to which of the funds your offering should go. If you do not designate a fund, your offering will go into the KUUF General Fund. If this is your first time at KUUF, you are our guest. There is no need to contribute. Let there be an offering to strengthen and sustain our community, which is sacred to so many of us.
Be ours a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple, all space, its shrine, the good heart, its creed, all truth, its ritual works of love.
Well, good morning again, everyone. It's time for our children's story. So I invite the young and the young at heart to scooch a little bit closer to the screen. You saw us light our Advent candle at the beginning of service today. Advent means coming. And Christians, some of our theological ancestors, celebrated this time of year waiting for Christmas and the birth of Jesus. As UUs, we celebrate this as a time of waiting as well, waiting for the return of the longer days of light, waiting for the rebirth of springtime, and this year in particular, waiting for the end of the pandemic, and dreaming of a time when we can be together again. But waiting is hard, isn't it? Being patient and calm, being still. We have to learn to appreciate the darker days. We rest more and sleep more. In the dark, even our eyes get a rest, which is good. So we can learn to rest our whole bodies too. And there are some tricks to being still and resting and waiting. Maybe you have learned some of them at school. It's important to practice together. So we're going to practice. And it's important to remind the grown-ups as well how to rest and wait, because sometimes as we get older, we forget the things we learned as children. And then guess what? It is the children who have to teach the grown-ups and remind the grown-ups. So first thing we do, we get the wiggles out. And there is a little poem that goes with getting our wiggles out. I wiggle my fingers, I wiggle my toes. I trust that you're wiggling your toes. I wiggle my toes. I wiggle my shoulders. I wiggle my nose. Let's do that again. I wiggle my fingers. I wiggle my toes. I wiggle my shoulders. I wiggle my nose. Now no more wiggles are left in me. So I'll be as still can be. You can do that as many times as you need to. Then with all the wiggles out of us, we get into our meditation positions. We sit comfortably in our chair or on the floor. We put our hands on our lap or on our knees. We sit up nice and tall. Very good, Liam. We focus our eyes in front of us. And then we find our breath, where it is moving in our body. Taking in 1, and slowly exhaling. So let's take a moment to focus on our breathing. I want to show you something. This is called a Hoberman sphere, created by an artist named Chuck Hoberman. It is also called an icosahedron. Say that 3 times fast. Icosahedron. So we can watch the sphere go in and out, and we can imagine that this is like our lungs and our tummies. So we start like this and we fill them with air, we inhale. Then we exhale all the air out. We can do that a couple more times. Inhale. Exhale. One more time. Inhale. And exhale. Ooh, that feels good, huh? So the candles of Advent are lit during this dark time to represent the light of the holy and to remind us that we are the light of the holy. This light exists inside all of us, and it is precious, and it needs love and care and rest and breathing. Like the light of a candle, it also needs oxygen. So we breathe in and feed the light inside of us. And we need to be gentle with it. And still, if you ever walked quickly with a candle, you know that if you move too quickly, the candle will go out. And so the light inside of us sometimes needs us to move a little bit slower as well. When it gets darker and darker outside and the days get shorter, and in this part of the world, even during the daytime, the sky can still be gray. And some days it's almost as if the sun doesn't come up at all. During this time, it's extra important to nurture the light inside of us because we bring the light to one another. That's what Christmas is all about. The season of giving isn't just about what gifts you can buy or gifts you can get. It's about sharing our light with one another in a time of darkness. So when we are breathing and being still, we can imagine that candle, maybe even a chalice inside of us, burning so bright that even though it is dark all around, this light inside of us can keep going. It can help light the way for everyone around us too. We can let our lights shine, right? Every week we've been singing that song, This Little Light of Mine, and we started singing it long ago, it feels months ago, to remind us that no matter how tough it is to be separated, we would let our lights shine out to one another, and that's how we would stay connected. Well, the song, This Little Light of Mine, was inspired by a Bible story, actually, one that is often used during Advent. And in this story, the prophet Jesus is preaching, and he says to all his friends gathered around, "You are the light of the world. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to the Holy." Well, during Advent, when it is darkest and we are separated, while we practice waiting patiently for the light to return, we can light our candles and remember that letting our lights shine helps dispel anything scary about the darkness. It lights the way. We can sing our song, This Little Light of Mine, and let our lights shine out together to everyone we love, we hold close in our hearts, and to the whole earth. So let's sing our song, shall we? I invite you to sing along with us, as we do every week. This little light of mine.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. All through the dark, all through the dark, I'm gonna let it shine. All through the dark, me. You and me. I'm gonna let it shine. You and me. I'm gonna let it shine. You and me. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. This little light of mine. This little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. 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 Let it shine.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, as always. We can't hear you, but we can feel you singing out. And now it is time for our joys and our sorrows. Though we are physically distanced from one another, our hearts and our spirits remain connected. When shared together, our joys are amplified and our sorrows lessened. If you have a personal joy or a sorrow to share, I invite you to write it in the chat this morning. And I will share my joy, which is the little Advent tree that we have that I love, and I'm really happy that we found that we can do the Advent candles on the tree. As we wait for our joys and our sorrows to come into the chat, I just invite you to appreciate the video that we have of our joys and sorrows candles in our sanctuary. Jerry, a long-term friend of mine, was recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Our hearts go out to you and your friend, Jerry. Jane says Bob's mom, Granny Franny, 104 3/4, was diagnosed with COVID on Monday and died Wednesday. Bob, we're so sorry to hear about the loss of Granny Franny, who sounds like such a precious, precious soul. Our hearts are with you, Jane and Bob, and your whole family. Amelia has a joy for Advent calendars. We share that too. Lena says, congratulations to my granddaughter Celia, who married her beloved Josiah last Tuesday. Congratulations, Celia and Josiah and Lena's whole family. Maya has a joy that Ada and Max are back in our bubble. How fun. I know that you love being with your friends. That's really wonderful. Joy from Lisa for the memories of Elizabeth Bondi. Thank you for the tree. I know I share in that joy. Owie shares a sorrow and fear for my family of origin, who's planning another in-person gathering with no precautions. Sending light and health to them, all of you. Marcia shares a joy for being able to bring meals and see my 90-year-old mom from a distance who lives on her own. Sharing in that joy with you. Joe has a joy that our Advent tradition continues, thinking of what it would mean to our dear departed Elizabeth Bondi. Alan has a joy for Mike Harris and everyone else who'll be working on our holiday food drive. Yes, joy for sure. Kathy, my joy is the comfort I have found with my KUUF family. Ellie has a joy in being able to socialize with friends around a bonfire in the evenings. That is a joy. Joey has a joy that I am slowly but surely losing weight. Well, I'm so glad that you're feeling healthier, Joey. Bonner has a joy for his first holiday tree that he has had since 1993, and the one that he ordered came during the service, during O Tannenbaum. That is a joy. Rebecca shares a sorrow. One of my little brothers, Joseph, is in prison. His birthday is this week. Hearts going out to Joseph while he's incarcerated on his birthday, to all the folks who are incarcerated right now. Judith has a wonderful walk on Friday with Vivian, Ellen, and Alan. First chance to meet KUF folks in person. Very grateful. What a joy. Marcia shares a sorrow and concern for all those with COVID and for all the healthcare workers who are tired in places that are understaffed. And Macy shares, so joyful to be with my boys, Reed and Miles, this weekend and find our Christmas tree. That is a joy. Joy, healthy body, technology, amen. Sharing in that joy, staying connected. Well, with all of our joys and our sorrows, we carry all of those in our hearts today. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. We all share in the joy of staying connected. Owen has a joy for Christmas lights. We all share in that joy too. It's wonderful to see Christmas lights. May you who shared this morning feel the love of this community surrounding you and holding you close. And for all those whose joy or sorrow is too tender to share, our hearts are with you. May the spirit of life and love bring peace to us all. Amen and blessed be.
Winter poem. No one but me by the fire, my hands burning red in the palms while the night wind carries everything away outside. All this petty worry while the great cloak of the sky grows dark and intense round every living thing. What is precious inside us does not care to be known by the mind in ways that diminish its presence. What we strive for in perfection is not what turns us into the lit angel we desire. What disturbs and then nourishes has everything we need. What we hate in ourselves is what we cannot know in ourselves, but what is true to the pattern does not need to be explained. Inside everyone is a great shout of joy waiting to be born. Even with the summer so far off, I feel it grown in me now and ready to arrive in the world. All those years listening to those who had nothing to say. All those years forgetting how everything has its own voice to make itself heard. All those years forgetting how easily you can belong to everything simply by listening. And the slow difficulty of remembering how everything is born from an opposite and miraculous otherness. Silence in winter has led me to that otherness. So let this winter of listening be enough for the new life I must call my own.
Well, in December of 1943, well-known German anti-fascist Lutheran minister and theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer sat awaiting trial in a Nazi prison camp during World War II. It was the season of Advent. Advent had always been a meaningful time of year for Bonhoeffer, whose theology was a lived theology, often focused on finding hope in the midst of pain and light in the midst of darkness, and his belief that theology itself can only have real meaning when applied. Without the application, To him, theology lacked inherent meaning. This seems very UU, doesn't it? Well, Bonhoeffer grew up in Berlin during the time of the Weimar Republic. He lost a brother in the First World War. He experienced the rise to power of Hitler's Nazi Party, and he helped establish the Confessing Church. During the 1930s, as the Nazis created a national Protestant religion in Germany centered around racial purity, the Confessing Church was a dissent against this effort. And Bonhoeffer's dissent, which he made certain was published publicly in the London Times, was illegal in Germany, and ultimately what landed him in that prison cell in 1943. That he applied his theology relentlessly, as far as it would go, during the rise of fascism in Europe, I find deeply inspiring, especially now for those of us wrestling with how to move forward during this time in US history. How deeply do we believe in our theology of love and justice? How committed are we to its application in our daily lives? For Bonhoeffer, his theology called him all the way to that prison cell, that Advent in 1943, that moment of holy waiting, like none he had ever experienced before. He reflected that the prison he was in was actually shaped like a cross, which for the Lutheran Bonhoeffer was, of course, deeply symbolic. And he wrote to his friends that the metaphor of Advent is not unlike a prison cell. One waits, hopes, does this or that, ultimately negligible things. The door is shut and can only be opened from the outside. What opened the door for Bonhoeffer, though he remained locked in that prison cell, was the birth of a tiny baby in a manger, just a baby. The birth of irresistible love, the kind of love that only a baby can bring, the kind you can't escape, that finds you and softens your heart no matter who or where you are, that transcends even the walls of a prison cell. The story of Christmas is the birth of hope in a world of chaos. As a frightened Holy Family flees persecution and gets turned away from every safe place of refuge, it is the story of how the birth of love, the kind of love that saves the world, can only happen when everyone and everything is at its most vulnerable. Bonhoeffer imagined that every year, for those of us who celebrate the season of Christmas, there is a knock on the door that is shut in our hearts, and it is up to each one of us to say, welcome, come in. Though I am vulnerable, though I am afraid, though I feel locked up in here as if I have nothing to give, I will believe, I will hope. I welcome love again, to be born right here in me. Though there is darkness all around, I will let my light shine. Bonhoeffer writes, and then just when everything is bearing down on us, to such an extent that we can scarcely withstand it, the Christmas message comes to tell us that all our ideas were wrong, and that what we took to be evil and dark is really good and light because it comes from the holy. Our eyes were at fault, that is all. God is in the manger, wealth in poverty, light in darkness, comfort in abandonment. No evil can befall us. Whatever men may do to us, they cannot but serve the holy, who is secretly revealed as love. For Bonhoeffer, the Christmas story is one where love always wins. And in fact, he believed that love can only win, that Advent can only be celebrated when one truly faces the reality of the circumstance of humanity. Though perhaps we are feeling especially blue this season because we've been parted from those we love, a story of humanity and its brokenness and its sorrows and its errors and its pain is a story that's been happening all over in all places across the globe for all time. It is a story as old as the story of Christmas, and in fact, it is older, and the Christians borrowed it from someone else. In that moment, when we feel we are suffering, we share in that suffering with all of humanity, here today on this planet now and throughout all of space and time. And as those who celebrate Christmas, we say that it is here, right here in the mess and the chaos and the disappointment and pain. It is only here that love can be born. This is the place love chooses. This is the door on which love knocks. That's the story we're celebrating this season. That's what we are waiting for. And it is a sacred story from holy books and holy traditions from time immemorial. And it is a modern story in some ways, because if we celebrate Christmas, but we aren't Christian, who comes knocking at our door each Christmas Eve? What magic do we welcome into our homes and our lives? We welcome Father Christmas, otherwise known as Santa Claus. And I want to tell you about one of my favorite Christmas movies from when I was a kid. This is not a detour, I assure you. The movie is called Santa Claus the Movie, very appropriate. And it begins with the story of Santa as Uncle Claus in the Middle Ages, a saintly woodcutter bringing toys to children who live in some distant land in the snowy mountains. And I loved the scene with the villagers in the Middle Ages and the snow and the trees and everyone gathered around the fire. And I loved the scenes of Santa later in his workshop, the colors and the magic of a place filled with toys and Rube Goldberg machines and flying reindeer who eat sparkly hay. But I was particularly captivated when Santa arrives at late 20th century New York City. Roger Ebert called this part of the movie jarring, and he panned the movie because of it, but it always made sense to me. As a child, this part of the movie appeared to me as a dangerous but realistic place, a world where children are homeless and hungry, people are cynical and angry, and there's this Trump-like businessman who wants to take over Christmas and use it to gain power and money. And the arrival of the virtuous old world Santa, the real guy, in this modern, scary, chaotic place, I was always thrilled to see it. I believed in the love that Santa showed to the sad and lonely that he encountered in the consumerist Christmas of the 1980s. I believed in it, and I still believe in it. I keep Christmas as a holiday because I believe in Santa. Santa, the love that softens our hearts, for those of us who have lost our way in the modern world. And I watch this movie every year because it reminds me that Santa is real. And every year I'm relieved to see that though the 20th century has made even the children lose hope and faith and belief, it is never really gone. Even in the mess of the modern world, it's still possible to have Christmas. Bonhoeffer wrote, "We can and should celebrate Christmas despite the ruins around us. I think of you as you now sit together with the children and with all the Advent decorations, as in earlier years you did with us. We must do this even more intensively because we do not know how much longer we have." Most of us, thankfully, will not be called to go as far as Bonhoeffer, who became a martyr to the cause of liberation. He did not live to celebrate another Christmas with his family. He was tasked with being content that last Christmas of his life with a small prison cell and a candle and his conviction of his own commitment to love and his belief that his efforts to save the world around him had been meaningful. In a letter to his fiancée, written on December 1st, 1943, Bonhoeffer wrote, I think we are going to have an exceptionally good Christmas. The very fact that every outward circumstance precludes our making provision for it will show whether we can be content with what is truly essential. Because he believed that not just celebrating is holy, but that the waiting itself is sacred, that silence is sacred, and that waiting is not a time of meaninglessness, but of deep significance. Even in prison, he knew himself to be whole and holy. One of the cornerstones of his theology was the belief that love wastes nothing. Love throws away nothing. Love loses nothing, not even these months apart of quarantine. And in fact, we may find that after this, we have the capacity for even greater love. Because through love, past pain is reclaimed and made meaningful. When grounded in love, this time matters most of all. For Bonhoeffer's theology, it is in fact a necessary part of the story. You can't have one without the other. From that perspective, if you look around and you see difficulty and pain and suffering, if you feel this tug toward sorrow and grief, a theology of hope tells us that the holy is near. Do not be afraid of being still, of waiting. While darkness can seem evil and makes us want to do something, anything to escape it, it is merely a time when it is more difficult to see the way through. Sacred unknown has taken hold. We are asked to have faith and trust that love will win in the end. And if it hasn't won, we can be certain it is not yet the end. And so we pause. We hold the tiny light inside of us as precious. We take our time moving through the darkness, going slow enough to keep the flame burning. In this moment, we find out how bright the stars really are, how even one lone star in the night sky can be enough to light our way. In Advent, in December, half the world enters a time of darkness, and all that's left is the light inside of us. And in the story of the humble manger, we must wait. This is the season of waiting, and it echoes the seasons of the earth and the seasons of life. The return of the light cannot be hurried, neither can the birth of a child. We can only have faith that it will happen in time. So we wait and listen for that knock on the door. We wait for the opportunity to say, "Come in." Though we are vulnerable, though we are afraid, though some of us are literally in lockdown, we still are called to prepare ourselves, called to be ready, ready to welcome hope, to welcome love again, irresistible love, which is going to be born right here, right where we are in this mess, which in the end is exactly where it must be born, and the only place it can be. And now I invite you to set an intention and choose your word for the week ahead. You can choose a word or phrase. And if you feel called to, put it in the chat and I will read them aloud. Gratitude. Survive. Joy. Patience. Reflection. Mostly okay. Stretch both mentally and physically. Hope. Wonderful music. I choose joy. Holy surrender. Gentle yet determined stillness. Peace. Listen. Grounded. Compassion. Anger is okay. See beauty in everyone. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. Our purpose is to find meaning. Thank you. The words of our intentions resonate in our hearts. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. Now is the time for our closing hymn, number 55, Dark of Winter.
Dark of winter, soft and still, your quiet calm surrounds me. Let my thoughts go where they will, ease my mind profoundly, and then my soul will sing a song, a blessed song of love eternal. Gentle darkness, soft and still, bring your quiet to me. Darkness, soothe my weary eyes, that I may see more clearly. When my heart with sorrow cries, comfort and caress me, and then my soul may hear a voice, a still small voice of love eternal. Darkness, when my fears arise, let your peace flow through me.
Well, thank you, everyone, for being here today. Please join us after this for coffee hour. A live link has appeared in the chat, and in a moment you can click on the link and it'll take you right to coffee hour. And the password is coffee with a capital C. And the question for our small groups during coffee hour is, how will you let your light shine during this Advent season of waiting? And I actually have a little photo to show you. one of our youngest members, who we last saw in person as baby Rowan, who played the baby last in our Christmas pageant, baby Jesus. Well, Rowan has a little announcement to make. I hope you can see that, the announcement from Rowan. Rowan is going to have a little brother. So we have another baby coming to this beloved community who will be born in April, little Andy, who we will be able to celebrate this spring and summer. Congratulations, Bunny and Matthias and Rowan. We cannot wait for love to be born once again and see the precious light and life of this new little one. And it is certainly worth waiting for. And we're so excited. And now let us extinguish our chalices with these words from Reverend Sandra Fees. Whoever you are, wherever you go, may you know the stillness of winter and the call to love. May you see the moon silvering the night sky, and let the dark of midnight plunge you into your truest self and fling you back out again to a world in need of who you are. May there be the familiar carols you know by heart and new melodies to set you free. May there be feasting and frolicking, kindness and wonderment. And may there be wise people to follow a star in the east and a child to teach us to love, and enough magic to let the imagination go wild, to let Christmas arrive with its enchantments, with its glitter, glow, and gold, to let what wants to be born break through. May the presence of the holy crowd out fear, hate, and worry, and proclaim in this moment that peace and goodwill might yet be breathed into the world, and a vow that we too can give birth to love wherever we go, whoever we are. Amen. Ashe. May it be so. Blessings, everyone.